Yeah, it like sets the mood, man. It's morning.
It's a good Sunday morning.
Welcome back to Wook Plus. I am Weekend Wook, joined by Brian from Attendance Bias. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing well. I feel pretty awake by this point in the morning. By day, I'm a middle school teacher, so my internal clock is a lot earlier. The day begins a lot earlier and ends a lot sooner than most people. So I'm feeling all right.
You handle the morning stream well?
The morning stream, yeah. Morning at work, not so much, but on the weekend, I'm good.
Yeah, this is kind of like a little experiment I've been running. It's we do all this stuff late at night usually, and like on the channel we do a lot of recaps and stuff, like all hyped up or in the middle of the week. And I kind of was like, hey, I want to just have casual conversations with fish fans, and I figured like get some coffee, hang out, you know, do this in this setting. I think it gives it a little more of a relaxed feel for me. I feel like you can just have a chill conversation and get down to some things and whatnot.
That's what I try to do. That's my podcast. That's kind of what I aim for every single time. Although my interviews don't usually happen on Sunday mornings early in the day, but I'm down for casual conversation.
Yeah, no, I love that the tone you have with your podcast. Excuse me. I think everyone's likely familiar at this point with attendance bias. I mean, you've definitely have gotten the podcast out there, and it's been very well received from everything I can tell. But for those of us, or for those, I mean, I have too, but for anyone who hasn't, why don't you tell us about the whole premise of your podcast?
Sure. Thank you. Attendance Bias is the name of it. It is the currently reigning Wook Plus podcast of the year. Let us not forget. So I have that to add to my
And
belt.
we haven't scheduled another Wookiee, so it might go down in history. We'll see if another one comes up.
The current and future king. But yeah, so the podcast is called Attendance Bias. You can see the ad on my screen. It's available pretty much anywhere you get podcasts. And the premise of it is pretty simple, I think. I interview fans, some who are well known, some are just everyday fans who just, I ask them, what's the most meaningful fish show that you've attended or jam that you've witnessed? What about it made it special? And tell your story. And that's really the elevator pitch. We go into a little bit more than that during the episode. I asked the person, the guest, a lightning round, so we get a little bit of background information or a profile of them as a fan. We talk about when the show was played. So I just conducted an interview yesterday from a person who talked about a Cincinnati show from the summer of '94. So after we got to know him, we talked about where was Fish in the summer of '94 and what was the scene
historical
like.
Context and everything. Yeah, that's awesome. That's very interesting stuff.
With all due respect to every guest I've had, including you, that might be my favorite part of the podcast, doing the context section, because I get to learn a lot more, not necessarily about the person, but about the fish scene, not always, but sometimes at a time when I wasn't around to witness it. So that's kind of the time travel aspect of the show. And then we break down the show or the jam song by song. And that's really it.
Well, I think that's a really good setup then. I actually was going to ask you for your most memorable story, and I think we will go back to that because I want to give you a chance the way you give your audience. But when you're talking about the context and the historical context and where the scene is at, where the band is at, it makes me wonder, what have you noticed or in your doing that about the evolution of the scene? How do you think things have changed over the years? Do you see any through line, or is it kind of random? Is there any pattern to it?
Definitely patterns. I think I'm a Libra, so my answer is going to be very balanced. I do think that a lot of the aspects of the fish scene collectively have stayed exactly the same. Like on paper, it could be described the same as 1995 as it can in 2023. I just think the tools are different. And what I mean by that is the fan base has always been so critical. It's a thing, like if you're an older sibling, if you're an older brother and you have a younger sister, you are allowed to tease your younger sister and make fun of her. But if anyone else does,
then they'll be held to pay.
Exactly. You better shut up. Don't say another word. So us as fans, we've always been so critical and so mean to each other and to the band at times, whether it's 1995, but we've also been in the same sentence able to say, but they're the best band in the world.
Right.
So you don't know what you're talking about if you criticize Fish, but I'm allowed to say it. And I just think now with however many social media tools we have, whether it's Facebook groups or X, Twitter, or Blue Sky, or pick your poison, everyone now has a platform. It used to be just sitting behind your hatchback in the parking lot with a couple beers, and you just get to in a friendly manner, kind of say what you liked or didn't like about last night's show. Now you get to post it, hit submit, and possibly millions or thousands of people can see it and respond to it.
Yeah.
So it's become, I think, enhanced in a way. I don't mean that necessarily positively, but it's become more accessible than it used to be. But I think the content is basically the same as it used to be.
It gives the illusion of us because I mean, say us as like, the greater fan base becoming more critical, but you would say that we've probably always been as critical. It just hasn't been broadcasted so widely.
Yeah, and
It's funny. Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, I was just going to say, and we're all self-appointed experts. Says
Right.
two guys who have their own shows.
Right. Right. No, I mean that's an interesting thing too about I do this and I'm sure I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you do it too out of a passion for the music and the band and the stories. Right. But then like you put yourself out there and then people start assigning some level of expertise to you or make assumptions or take things as like a doctrine and like it's funny because I think of it as hanging out on lot, right, drinking a beer and like just talking about what the show or whatever, but almost forgetting that you have like this whole audience that is in on your conversation.
Well, that's kind of the vibe I try to push. You mentioned the tone at the very beginning of our conversation of my podcast. The way I look at it, number one, I'm certainly not. I truly believe there is no expert on fish. I think that phrase is non-existent. Even
Yeah.
Trey is not an expert on fish because he said himself he's never been to a show.
Yeah.
So he can't be an expert. We can't be
I got
experts.
headier stats than Trey.
Right? Yeah. So I don't think that there is an expert on fish. I think that title is non-existent. But also, I think that for my podcast, anyone who hasn't heard of it or hasn't heard it, the vibe I try to cultivate is when you are at a show, either by yourself or maybe with one or two other people, but you're on the end seat and you're sitting next to someone you don't know, and you just start a conversation. You have a friend for a pre-show and you
Yeah.
talk about your favorite jams and the best show you've ever been to and your favorite stories from being into this band. And then the lights go down. And then you continue that conversation at set break. And then maybe after the show or after the encore, you exchange what used to be email addresses. Now it's texting or numbers. And that's kind of what I try to cultivate in terms of tone. It's
I
generally
love
very
doing that.
friendly.
I can't tell you how many people I have in my phone as like blank dash fish, like Bob dash fish. And like at some point you forget who they are, but it's all people you meet at the shows. And you're like, and it always starts too, like, oh, were you here last night? And then like, oh yeah. And,
Always.
hey, did you catch that? Oh, it was so good, or hey, did you catch this show last week? If it's like not a long run. And then you make friends with complete strangers, and it's like you're automatically on the same playing field, right? It's like a grand unifier.
Yeah.
No, I
That's what I
appreciate
go
that tone
for.
you have with your podcast. I think that's a really cool way to do it. And I think that's we need to remember that vibe in the scene in general, right? And not I think that's a healthy way to go about it, I guess. Why don't we do go back though? Because everyone on your shows always comes up with a show that they is very memorable for them and has all these meaning or a fond story. But what about you? What is a very fond fish memory of yours personally that you want to talk about?
I mean, I have dozens or hundreds, but I think, well, my first show is obviously my favorite, but I do think that most of my memories of it are of listening to it after I got the tapes, as opposed to direct memories from the show itself.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that, but a memory that I have in real time that I always go back to, I recorded a mini episode about it on my podcast, was October 8th, 1999, which was at the Nassau Coliseum
Oh
on Long
yeah.
Island. And the show itself, if you look at it or listen to it objectively, it's not going to stand out as an all-time great. It's not what I would call, in capital letters as a proper noun, a special show. But at the very end, Tom Marshall came on to do a guest spot, and they sang "We're Not Gonna Take It," not by Twisted Sister, the song that's at the end of Tommy by The Who.
Uh,
And it's really funny, but it's genuine at the same time. My friends and I lived about 10 minutes. We were in high school at the time. We lived about 10 minutes from the Nassau Coliseum. So our high school last period got out at like 2:05. We all went home, like changed our shirts or got whatever we needed, and then grouped up in a carpool and just went straight to the Coliseum. So we were in the parking lot at like 2:45, and we got right in line for GA. And we were front row, right in front of Paige, riding the rail. And
I've
I was
never been
wearing,
on the rail. That must have been fun.
it was super fun. We did it 2 nights also. They played the night before, October 7th, at the Coliseum, which is, in my opinion, the musically superior show. But this night, the 8th, I was wearing a shirt that I still have, a shirt of Keith Moon that I found like in the basement of a head shop or something. And I was the biggest Who fan in the whole wide world. Fish was just kind of edging the Who out as my favorite band.
Yeah.
And so we heard rumors in the parking lot that Tom Marshall was there. But when he came on at the end and sang a song by The Who, I was front row. It wasn't exactly
Wearing a Who
wearing a
shirt.
Keith Moon shirt. And it's
Yeah.
also not like a big well-known Who song that you're going to hear on classic rock radio, right? This
Yeah.
was before streaming services were available, and it just blew me away. That was the first big time jumping up and down, not seeing anything around me freak out that I had at a Fish show. Everything lined up.
That's a crazy coincidence too, unless they saw your shirt and were like,
I don't know. I can't imagine that
They've
was
done
the
shit like
case.
that before, though. I mean, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility.
It's not. I had Tom Marshall on my show, and I didn't really ask him too much about it because the purpose of it, the obstinate purpose of the interview was about the launching of Osiris Media and the Undermine podcast.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to get too sidetracked, but I asked him about it. And the only story he had was that when he came on, he said, I don't know if you remember this, but I was in pajama pants because he was backstage and it was supposed to be the encore. And then sometime toward the end of the second set, he said that like Brad Sands came in and said, hey, you're on right now. And so he ran on. He was barefoot in pajama pants. I don't think they saw it because I'm not that tall, and just the rail probably came up to my chest anyway. But I think it had to be a coincidence because there's a line that says, my name is Tommy. And I think that was kind of the connective tissue there.
Yeah. Did you feel fully content and fulfilled with your Tom Marshall interview? The only reason I asked that is because I had a chance to speak with them once too, and it was awesome. And he's very gracious and generous with his time, and and a true fan. But it was like there was like some level of not intimidation, but like a different level of stress in the preparation for it than you do, right? Because you're talking to Tom Marshall. He's the lyricist of Fish. And afterwards, like a year afterwards, I went back and watched, and I was like, I should have done this. I wish I asked that. Why did I do this? And it is what it is. I was just wondering, how'd you feel after your interview with them?
I felt very proud, to
Yeah.
be honest. I really did. I didn't feel such intimidation. I did feel a little bit of nerves leading up to it because it took a while to set up. There was a lot of back and forth, but he was, like you said, very gracious with his time. When I messaged him, I knew I was talking to him. I wasn't talking to an agent. I wasn't
Right.
talking to any in-between person. So I knew that he and I were on the same page. But also something about my podcast, I never get intimidated by any guest that I have because we're all Fish fans.
Right.
I could be talking to anyone. I could be talking to Tom Marshall, or I could be talking to my wife, who was on an interview, an episode last year, and I'm not comfortable with anyone more than her. So it was, or my dog, if you could hear him in the back.
We have pets on all the time. That's awesome. We're a pet friendly show.
But I know I didn't feel that nervous with him. I wish I got to ask a few more Fish related or personal questions that I personally wanted to know, but I wanted to keep up a professional front.
Right.
Because I was asking him about Osiris Media and Undermine, and I didn't want him to get a sour taste in his mouth that I like suckered him in to talking
Right,
to
right.
me. And
False
sucker,
premise.
yeah, this is really about all the questions fish fans want to know. I wanted to keep it professional in that sense.
I think that's the difference. I think we and I don't know how familiar you were with Plus at that time, but we were not very professional. It was kind of like get together before dinner and a movie and have a bunch of drinks and bullshit. And that was one of the first times that it was like a legit, like, like and it was not super professional. It's fun though. No, it's cool though. I do like that. I like that one. I like my interview with you. I guess if I'm allowed to
I did
say.
too. Yeah, you
That was a
should.
fun one. I also like you guys have Stubby down, Josh and Skinny on. I say you guys, it's you.
Yeah.
I'm used to doing it by committee, but I love those guys too. So those are they've been on a couple of times. I love when they're on.
Yeah, the three of us have become pretty good friends through this podcasting lens. And it's just when they started promoting theirs, I read it and my first thought was like a twinge of, oh, is this a ripoff? Like, because their premise is pretty similar to mine, but it's not the same. And also, podcasts vary depending on the hosts.
Yeah,
And they and I are very different
yeah.
in terms of how we're looking at this. And I figured in this small world of fish or jam band based podcasting, why make enemies? Why feel bitter? You know, it's better to reach out and form something closer to a community as opposed to any sort of animosity. So I figure why not do, you know, guest exchanges and be on each other's shows. Or if Fish plays a 4-night run at the Garden and we were each at all four or a few of them, why not do just a recap, something
And
like that,
there's
like
no
you guys do?
limit in the amount of content fish fans can consume. I think that's proven by the band itself. The fact of the matter is if you make good shit and people want to watch it, they're gonna watch it or listen to it, right? And so like the idea of being competitive, like, oh, you can't watch that. Yeah, a lot of I don't know if you're familiar with Dev Zappa. He's another big YouTube guy that does fish stuff, and like a lot of
Yep.
people were expecting us to be like rivals because oh, you're doing fish on YouTube. You can only be one. I was like, why? It's like, okay, you have like an hour a week, like or 2 hours a week. It's like the people they have time for it. Like there's no sense. And he's a chill dude. And I'm like, and same thing with Stommy Down and you and Osiris, like HF Pod and those guys. Like I think everybody like they mean well. I think the difference is like if you have ill intent and you're a dick, which none of those people are, but that's when okay, I'm not gonna be cool with you. Like I'm not just gonna blindly be cool with you because you're part of the community, right? But like if you're not a dick and you have like you mean well, then there's no point in us not all getting along.
Well, that goes back to your first question about any patterns or any similarities or differences from the fish community, quote unquote, back then to now.
Back in the
That's
day.
always been true. If someone's a dick, don't interact with them.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, SC man, how you doing? Glad to see. You had to break in the chat there. Actually, I'm gonna throw a question out because I see people on, but the chat is not lively this morning. I think people are still waking up. I'm gonna throw a question to you, Brian, but I want the chat if they're feeling inclined to answer this. So we're in October. We're coming up on Halloween. Now, unfortunately, this year we're not getting a Halloween run. Although the fall tour was dope and I loved having that little mini tour. So I'm not gonna complain too much. But I was thinking this morning, what is the most important Halloween in fish history? And I'm not even going to define it more than that because you could look at the costume sets, you could look at the first costume set, you could look at the more recent stuff with Cosbot and Sci-Fi, you could look at Thrilling Chilling, you could look at Wingsuit. There's a lot of different aspects you could think of it. What do you think is the most important out of all of those different experiments?
This might not be a popular answer, but it is an honest answer. I think that the wingsuit Halloween set is the most important by
Okay,
miles. By miles.
go on. now,
Uh,
now you have to justify your answer.
well, I was going to say because the next night was awesome. No, but if it was the riskiest concert that they've ever played by a million years, because whenever you've been to any band, whether it's Fish or any mainstream act, and they say we're going to play a new song or a song off our new album, everyone goes to get a beer, everyone takes a piss. Fish did that for an hour and 20 minutes.
Ballsy move. For
Ballsy
sure,
move.
it's a ballsy move.
The guy next to me traveled from like Portland, Oregon
Yeah, and they're expecting like Zeppelin or fucking Zappa or something.
Yeah, the big rumor that year was Eat a Peach, that everyone thought they were going to cover the Allman Brothers. And but what it did, even though the album itself was not very well received, I could say that from firsthand experience, having been there. It allowed Fish to realize that they don't have to be beholden to another band's music to have fun on Halloween. And if we never got Wingsuit, we never would have got the chilling, thrilling sounds of the haunted house. We never would have got Kazvat Vaxxed. We never would have got Sci-Fi Soldier, for better or for worse, depending on your point of view. But it
I like
opened this
Sci-Fi
idea
Soldier.
when I like the music from it. I wasn't there and I still haven't seen the video of the performance, but a lot of people, it was the first Sing Monica. Yeah, it is ballsy, says SE in the chat. It was. And I still like that song. And it was not only that, it was also acoustic. And it sounds really good when you go back to it. I'll die on that hill. But when you think about it, to play an hour of 20 minutes worth of new music to, as we discussed way earlier, probably the most critical, actively critical fan base.
Yeah, especially at that
That's
time.
Yeah, and
That's a
everyone was
highly critical
bitching
time
about
period.
Fish not coming up with new music
Yeah.
at the time. You know, you go back, what was that? Was Joy the most recent album at that time?
Yeah, and then they didn't do anything for that was the longest period because then after that it was like every 2 years. But
Right.
that was what, 13?
That's 2013. Yeah.
So that was 4 years without a new album or and really any major new writing, new songs.
And I remember in the Fish Bill, in the interview, they had little quotes from the different band members about Wingsuit, because going in, a lot of people thought it was a joke. A lot of people thought that it was Fish's way of outsmarting social media by like saying, "Hey, we're gonna cover this album called Wingsuit," but they were really gonna play "Sports" by Huey Lewis. You
Right.
know, like disseminating misinformation to outsmart the audience and spreading the surprise, spoiling the surprise. And people were in denial all the way up to the beginning of the set. So I think that it not only opened a huge door of creativity for the band, but whether or not you like the album or the music that came from it, I think that's the most important one, because it certainly opened the door for at least 3 other Halloween albums since then.
Yeah, no, you're right. I see. I was thinking when I was posing this question, I always go to Thrill and Chillin' because of the vast creativity of it. Like Wingsuit was the off ramp into doing something besides a costume set, like a traditional costume set, and I think that was absolutely critical. But then like Thrilling Chilling was the or Chilling Thrilling, whichever, was the explosion of just insane creativity for the Halloween runs. But I think the way you're describing it, though, I can appreciate the bigger. It was a bigger risk with Wingsuit, right? Like Thrill and Chilling was only possible because of the Wingsuit set.
Exactly. And Thrilling
Yeah, Abe
Chilling
Vigoda was
had
awesome.
yeah, Abe Vigoda was great. It was talking about trick or treat on Halloween. That was like the ultimate trick and treat. Of all the people, you know, you can name 100 actors that might appear on stage with Fish, Tom Hanks included, and Abe Vigoda would not have come up on that list. He was in his 80s at the time.
Yeah, he looked it too.
Yeah, he did. And it was a good joke, by the way, that they had all these wombat dancers. And then the joke that he took off the wombat himself. And, you know, he went off stage and then Abe Vigoda walked on because it was a real professional dancer. The joke that it was Abe Vigoda doing all those dance moves, that was a good joke. And it also gave us the Godfather spoof at the end of the set,
Yeah.
Don Gordleone.
Which it was, there was a lot of redeeming qualities there. I think the album just and I hate to be hypercritical, but this is what Fish fans do. There were so many good things about that album, I think, that I like, and this will actually probably lead into a guilty pleasure thing, but like the line and devotion to a dream and there was just five. There's songs that just I never could get behind, and I remember even thinking like I don't like it now, but I will because that's happened so many times, right? Where Fish comes out with new music, and I was like, and then I find myself like liking it a lot or loving it years later. So I even remember thinking when I heard those songs, is like I don't like these now, but I might one day, and now it's what, 10 years later?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
coming
10-year
up.
anniversary, and I still don't love those songs. I will tell you some of the songs I do love though are, well, one of the songs, because I want to talk about guilty pleasures, is Wombat. I fucking love that song. I've never not been happy hearing a Wombat. That song just, it slaps and it's fun and it's like a perfect combination of everything. I don't even know if that would constitute as a guilty pleasure. I just feel like that's one that like people wouldn't mention like, oh, I love that song, but I really do like fucking listening to that song. It's fun as hell.
And it got a pretty good response at the show in real time because a lot of these songs on what became the Fuego album are constructed, they're composed, they're very well thought out. The lyrics are meaningful, and Wombat is just goofy fun. So a lot of
Yeah.
people, I don't think a lot of people were sitting down, but it had that vibe in the room as if they were.
Right.
And
During the rest
Wombat
of
picked
the
everyone
set.
up. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Wingsuit is on it. Actually, that's what they called the album for the Halloween was Wingsuit, and then they switched it to Fuego.
Yep.
Wingsuit, I love that song too. I think that's a really good one. What do you have for guilty pleasures though? Are there any songs that you really like that you feel like maybe aren't universally received or might feel like a slightly guilty pleasure?
Well, in reference to the chat, I do like Sing Monica. I really do. I think that the lyrics, it's a very cheeky wordplay the whole way. And as a middle school English teacher, I'm a big fan of that. I don't need to hear it every show, but I got nothing, no hate for Sing Monica. But I'll answer SC's question in just a second. But More is a song that I started really rolling my eyes hard at and like Set Your Soul Free. The whole, to quote the guys from Stub Me Down, they call it the Church of Trey. This kind of new genre, 3.0 or 4.0 genre
Yeah, the
of,
Soul series, Love and Lion.
yes, everything's water and everything's sunshine and all that. A lot of those songs I really start off not liking, and then I hear it at just the right moment or the right place. By the end of More, now I'm pumping my fist and singing the chorus along with everybody else. But when I first heard it, I thought, what am I doing here? It's kind of like a life reevaluation. Like, this is not the same band that wrote and played It's Ice.
Right.
And it isn't. It
No,
is, but
it
it isn't.
100% isn't. That song is one I think more than any other song is about personal headspace and where you're at. I mean, obviously, the way people receive music is always a very personal thing and subjective. But if I think that song, if all the everything is right in like meaning like all the variables are a certain way, it can hit harder than almost any other song because it has the potential there, right? It touches on that things, but it can also come across super cheesy or super deflating of the set. And I think that if I had to describe that, it would probably be the most bipolar song for me because there are versions I've caught live where I'm on cloud nine and it just hits perfectly, and there's other times I've caught it and I'm like literally frustrated, not like in an angry way, like I'm not, but I'm just so like pulled away from the show, and I can't put that on anything else besides just Headspace. I think it's 100% tied to Headspace.
But it's also tied to, I agree with you. It's also tied to the lens in which you're seeing it. I go to a lot of shows with friends of mine, one of whom is in recovery. And a lot of these songs mean the world to them.
Right.
And when you look at it, the lyrics and then the kind of uplifting major key big bang chorus at the end, and you see the inspiration that it brings to people, this message that luckily I have not been through that experience, addiction and recovery, but the people who have been, who like these songs, I think it connects. I just don't think I'm on that wavelength on a very elemental level, fundamental level. So in one way, I'm glad about that. That's
Right.
not, you don't want to
Knock
go
on
through
wood.
that. Yeah,
Right.
right. Yeah. But at the same time, I can understand completely why somebody who has been through that experience grasps onto that message, especially the big positive vibe at a Fish show.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, a lot of us, most of us, I think, have kind of grown up with the band, or maybe not like since being children, but like in our young adulthoods, or like we've evolved with the band. And so, like, these songs too can bring you back to different memories or your path. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching here, but I'm just drawing these connections of like my emotional connections to songs, and like like I have friends that I go see shows with 10, 15 years ago, and like they've gone on different paths, and so then you hear these things. It's it draws you into different memories. I'm rambling now, Brian. You got to bring me back on.
All
You're a
right.
professional.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best. So SC asked what my thought is on Yarmouth Road.
Yes,
I can take or leave Yarmouth Road. I
I
don't love
believe it.
it, but I don't hate it. Like I got nothing bad, but if I've been holding it in, if they just finished, like a 26-minute tweezer and they start Yarmouth Road, I am dashing for the bathroom. It's never a song that I'll miss, but it's also never a song that if I'm hearing it, I'm okay with it. I think it's a good studio song. I think that's a
Yeah.
good way to put it.
I take exception, and I've brought this up probably like the last 5 live streams in a row. SE, I think SE was baiting too a little bit.
Yeah.
I've had Mike's vocals, like his vocal prowess on certain songs, and I think it's the writing because it's not like I could say I don't like his singing. A lot of songs I love his singing, like really enjoy it, but there's certain songs where the way he writes it, like it drones on one note that's slightly out of range or whatever, like uh it just doesn't work for me. And I feel like that era of songs and in particular Yarmouth Road is a perfect example of songs that just like I don't know. But anyway, we're not Essie, you got to cut that shit out, man. We're not being negative on Sunday morning. It's positive vibes. We're having a nice
Drink your
chill.
coffee.
Yeah. We're having a nice chill conversation on this Sunday morning with Brian from Attendance Bias. All right. Let's keep moving. Um New Year's Eve is coming up. No, it's all right, man. I love you, Essie. So do you have any idea? I mean, I know there hasn't been any rumors or anything, but just pure speculation. What you think the New Year's Eve midnight song is going to be this year?
I have no idea. And even when it comes to speculation, I've learned over the past at least 10 years or more at this point, if you can think of it, if you can think they'll do it, you're wrong. Like Fish can only do things that no one could really think about. Like you can't predict it. If you're predicting XYZ, then
Then
they
it's
can't do
already
it's off
out.
the table. Right.
Right.
Right. I know a lot of people are wondering why they haven't done a lot of acknowledgement of their 40th year together over the course of this year. For a while, there was rumors of a 95 East Northeast run,
Yeah.
like the Northeast corridor. Like,
Yeah, in early December. I actually heard people that are usually pretty good with tips that like, have a good accuracy were telling me like, yeah, no, it's in the works. And so I was feeling pretty confident about it, and then it fell apart. I don't know if that was just bullshit feeding bullshit or what, but
unless they did it like the Island Tour, where it's announced like a week ahead of time.
I can't see that happening these days, though. Right? I
I
don't know.
don't.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
right? You just said you can't expect anything with Fish, but
But my response to people who brought up that they haven't acknowledged their 40th anniversary, it's like that was their whole New Year's gag last year,
yeah,
and it was enormous. It was, Trey said, if we could do it all, I wish we could do it all again. And it was fabulous. So I think it was very smart of them to get it all out of the way in one big song, pretty much. And but I have no idea. They're gonna play three great shows or three good to great shows and one compact, maybe underwhelming show on New Year's Eve, as tends to happen
yeah.
with split opinions. But no, I have no idea what they can do for a gag. I've learned better than to speculate or try and guess.
I'm a big fan of the 29th, and my limited experience with New Year's runs. The 29th usually delivers really a lot. I mean, I don't know. They're all fun.
The 29th used to be my favorite because my first show was December 29th, 97.
Oh, that's a particularly good 29th.
Right, it is. But I've learned over the course of the years that almost always musically the 30th is more reliable.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a hard transition for me, but I've agreed to that.
Well, especially in New York, the 28th is hectic and crazy. You're just getting, well, you're in New York, so right? So yeah, it's not as crazy. But for those of us that are coming in, the 20th is usually crazy and just like a fun party, but like get settled in. 29th and 30th are the two prime, I think. But there's no real pattern. That's just, the perception of it, I guess.
Yeah.
I
I
think they're
agree.
gonna do Oblivion, and it has a feel of the Mercury year. What was that? 2018.
Yeah, the answer is always what's the new song that they seem to enjoy playing the most every year,
Right.
whether it's Say It to Me Santos or Oblivion. Well, not Oblivion,
Yes.
Mercury, like you just
Santos and
said.
Mercury, yeah, together. Well, that was together, wasn't it? I think that was the
Was it
same
one
year.
after the other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice, Mr. Plow. I'm glad you're making it there. It's gonna be a fun run.
Yeah,
Uh,
it always is. I mean, they make it very easy for me personally. I live in a neighborhood called Forest Hills, which is in Queens, and the Long Island Railroad, the commuter rail from Penn Station, it's literally a 16-minute straight shot from my train station right to Penn Station. So during the Baker's Dozen or during the Seven show run this summer, there were nights where I had dinner at home and then just got on the train and went right upstairs to my seat.
Man, the Baker's dozen was such a good time having that consistent like pattern. I don't live in New York, but we essentially like moved in for that run. You know, various. I slept on Pete's floor for a couple nights. We got an Airbnb for a week. I stayed at a buddy's house. Like different, but like you essentially live there and like just having that consistent run and just commuting to fish every day. It's like that's the dream. I mean, I know it sucks for people that weren't there or like don't live nearby and like how expensive it was, but if you could swing it, it was. I mean, nothing like it in my opinion.
It was the Baker's Dozen of 3.0. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, it was the Big Cypress of
the Big
3.0.
Cypress of 3.0, right? Right, and me having someone a slightly younger fan that didn't swing. I mean, I was listening to Fish in '99, but I was too young to go to Florida, for like so like I didn't get to experience that. So like to have like, and I'm not saying it's the same, but like to have like a special memory like that where like we were all doing it together was really nice. Um, yeah, good times, good times, good times. All right, let's see what else we want to talk about. Oh, I have a question for you. I'm going to get the speculation out of the way. Uh, you were just like, I can't speculate and you have no expectations, but do you think we're getting an album? I feel like there's so many new songs that have come out, and it's been what? When did Sigma Oasis come out?
2020.
2020?
It was
Holy shit.
during it was
Yeah.
during COVID lockdown.
Yeah, I thought that was 21 for some reason. Those years all blend together for me. It was like
Yeah.
one big mess of time. But like they were averaging every 2 years, and not that like there's like a expectation, but then and even the years that they didn't have it, they would have like Cosmot Vox or Sci-Fi, and like there's always. And now it's been a while. It feels like we're due, but I've heard no rumblings of it, no rumors. There's been no Mike posting on Instagram from the studio. What do you think about getting another? Do you want another studio album? Are you a big studio guy, like a fan of studio albums, or are you okay without it?
I'm all right without them. I mean, studio albums got me into Fish for the big time, for the most part. A Picture of Nectar and Hoist mostly dragged me in. I do think Sigma Oasis is their best studio album.
Yeah, I agree. I actually listen to that. I don't listen to Studio Fish that often anymore, except for Sigma Oasis. Sometimes I'll spin that just because it's like I like those versions. I think that's the
Yeah.
best version of Thread they've ever played. I don't think there's a better Hallmark version of Thread out there.
I was going to say the same about Steam,
Yeah, Steam too. Both of them. Yeah,
but
actually, there's
it's.
been a lot of crap versions of Steam. No, there's been some decent, but not. I think that is the best one though.
Mhm. I think that I think we probably will get a new studio album, but at the same time, I wonder what Fish has to gain by releasing any more studio albums for the remainder of their career. I think in their heads, because of their age and their formative years, I think that they have this goal collectively to create whatever this means to them, a great studio album where because I think you grew up, I mean, I did also, where albums were the big part. Like touring wasn't as big a deal as is this a good album from any
Right.
given band. But I think that Fish still has it in their head that these bands that they grew up loving, whether it's the 60s, 70s, or 80s, rockers or whoever else, that they gravitated toward those albums. But I don't know, like what do they have to gain
Yeah.
from an?
What's their
Is it just a
motivation?
place in time? So they had a record of literally a record of where they were in 2023 or in the early 2020s is because commercially they certainly don't need it.
Right. I mean, that whole business model commercially doesn't, I don't think, hold up anymore with any musicians, really, but especially in this scene, because I don't think the sales come close to anything else they do, right? Like, they're never going to make the same amount of money that they make off their touring that they do with their album sales. Um, I don't know. I feel like that there's a passion for the production side of it too, though. I think when you see Trey talk about his rig, or Mike talk about his rig, or Paige talk about his rig, right? Like they're always like fine tuning all these nuances. And I think in arena rock, like in the setting of playing like MSG or United Center or whatever, it's like you lose a little bit of that, and then obviously pre-recording things, you have post-production, and I wonder how much of it would be they want to create like a seminal version of these songs where they can add the certain effects. I know as a drummer, I've heard Fish talk about this, that he plays differently when he's playing like in a jazz club or in a studio versus an arena, because a lot of the subtlety he does as a drummer is lost in the arena. Like you just never would hear it. So he doesn't do it, right? And he emphasizes different things. I don't know. That's what I've heard from him. What I don't know, but what I'm speculating is that he likes the subtlety and nuance, and that he might also want an opportunity to showcase that, or to experiment with that. Um, but yeah, from a commercial standpoint, or from a fan base like hunger for it, I don't think there's a huge hunger for Studio Fish right now. I don't think there's anybody that's like, oh, I can't wait to hear the new LP,
Yeah,
right?
I can't wait till Oblivion they put that down.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening. I mean
But
I
ironically, I
do.
do though. I think Oblivion. I love that fucking song. I would. I personally want to hear it like perfected and recorded in the studio. But I think that's the outlier. I don't think that is a common you know feel right now. Have you heard anything of Have you seen any of the U2 shows or any of the clips from the Sphere yet?
Yeah, I have. I've seen the same clips that probably everybody has seen.
Yeah. What do you think about Fish going out there? I mean, I'm not asking if you think they will go out there, because I'm pretty confident based on the like dozens of sources now that have, publicly and privately have said, confirmed it. Like they're going out there. But for you personally, are you excited about them going to the Sphere, or
I'm
not
excited
really?
about seeing the video of it afterward, which I know kind of goes against the whole idea of you have to be there to. It's like an immersive venue, is how they're pushing it. They'll definitely go out there. I agree with you. The fact that it's owned by MSG to begin
Right.
with, just on a professional relationship basis, they'll definitely play there. The tickets will probably be $400 a pop, but
That's
it's
just base level, and then platinum charity or whatever the hell
ugh,
they call it, it's going to be out through the roof.
but I mean, it looks cool as hell. I mean, just the outside of it, when you see people post on whether it's TikTok, Instagram, or whatever, like what the outside of the Sphere looks like, that's enough to impress me. I think that's
Yeah.
cool as hell. Uh, I do like the idea, or I'm curious about the idea, because U2 is and always has been a top production band. They really do. If anyone's old enough to remember their Zoo TV tour,
Hmm.
it looked incredible. It really is. They care about their audience and they care about how they are perceived as a band. U2 does. But they play the same show every night. It's choreographed, and Fish is anything but. So I'm very curious how something that needs to be pre-programmed would jive with a band that is the least pre-programmed
Right.
that can possibly be. So I'm curious. I'm not that interested in going there at the moment. I don't like I when I found out that there are certain seats. Like this is kind of like the Beacon Theater in New York. It's cool to see orchestra, but if you're past row like 20, you're under the balcony above you. So you don't
Right.
get to see what's going on, and to have spent $2 billion plus on a venue like that to have obstructed views,
Is insane.
it's
Yeah.
I don't get
How
it.
do you do that?
Yeah,
Um, no, I agree. I think as far as like the produced video versus the unscripted band, right? There's like three logical solutions. You either try to script the band, which I don't think they're gonna do, or you try to, or you leave them independent of each other, like a screensaver, where you just have something psychedelic going on and it's on, connected to the music, which I personally don't think they're going to do, even though that's probably the easiest solution. And then I think the third option is you figure out a way to unscript the production. And I think that's, through different tools where it's like, instead of, how like Crota pre-assembles light combinations and stuff, maybe you can pre-assemble certain visuals on the screen and then it gives similar commands to be like this, and it might not be as like overwhelming or impressive as some of the things that like you two did, but like it could still at least tie the production to the music on some level. And I think just by the scale of it will be impressive, even if it's not like crazy graphics or something.
Well, that's undeniable. I agree with you. The scale of it is going to be massive. It's going to be unlike anything anyone's seen. Although I think back to 2016, I think it was the fall tour when they had those backing lights, if you
Yeah.
remember, and
Everybody hated them.
yeah, including the band.
Yeah.
In an interview, Chris Kuroda said that we all agreed, he used those words in the first person plural. We all agreed that it wasn't what we wanted for the stage show.
Yeah.
So this just seems like an enormodome version of that. But at the same time, as cynical and negative as I might sound, it looks cool as shit.
Yeah,
It really does. Even a band like U2 that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I do like them, but I'm not a huge fan of them. It looks so cool.
Yeah. It looks very, very cool. Those 14 screens, I liked. Maybe I don't know if I'm unique on this. I liked them in the first set when they were down.
2016.
Is that when? Oh, is it 16? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was after Magna Ball, right?
Yeah.
I liked them in the first set when they kept them down. I kind of bugged me out when they elevate them and were moving them around and like opening them and shutting them. That I think that was more of when it was like too much for me and took away. But like having the ring behind the band didn't bother me too much. And he usually kept it pretty. I don't know if you remember, but like kept it pretty mild in the first set, right? And then things always got way crazy in the second set, and you're like, all right, easy CK5. Yeah. So you were at the Beacon last night.
Yeah.
Did they have the high fidelity like tuned audio to each seat? Because I think that's the thing about the Sphere that's really exciting too, is they have that same technology. What is that like being there and hearing that?
It's pretty good. They actually debuted it, I think it was now maybe as much as 2 years ago when Trey played a solo acoustic show. I was at that show too. And I remember the big hype leading up to it. It was only announced like a couple weeks in advance. It was just like, we installed this sound system. Who can we call to come down and test it out? And Trey lives literally like 4 blocks from the theater. Yeah, I can picture that like on the phone. But I
the bat signals like the F hole from his guitar. They put it in the sky and Trey shows up.
And I was in the second to last seat. So when they were promoting perfect sound in every seat, I remember thinking, I am really testing out their promotion. Like I'm really trying them. It wasn't 100% as described all the way up, but I was able to sneak down a little bit in the first balcony. Last night also, it was wonderful. The sound is great. If you have a mixer who knows what he or she is doing, it's perfect.
Noticeably better than like a normal theater show or like a normal big show, right? Like there's a noticeable improvement from like an average room sound.
Yeah, especially these older theaters. I don't know what the Sphere would be like, but a theater like the Beacon, where there's like the Capitol Theater is kind of it's smaller, but it's comparable to it. Where if you, like I was describing before, if you're a certain number of rows back, you're under the balcony above you. That's usually death for sound quality. But they've done a lot with this system to make it to make sure that's as good as it can be. And I appreciate that. I think that's great. It's just now expensive as hell.
Right. It's like anything else. It's a cool thing, but it just adds to the price.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently I forget how many, I'm going to say a round number. I don't know if this is right. I feel like I read like 18,000 speakers or something were put into the Sphere. Like it's supposed to have that same high quality, like high fidelity, perfect audio in every seat type of system. Which I personally have not experienced, but am excited to at some point. I think that's especially with like Fish, because honestly, like as much as we talk about like the Sphere and the spectacle and like the lights and everything, I a lot of times will like close my eyes at shows. And like I know that's like maybe a weird thing because the light show is so cool, but like I like to maybe like drown out all the distraction and just listen to it all and like feel the energy and like feel like vibrate through you and hear the music. And the idea of having it like perfectly mixed no matter where you are is very exciting and appealing to me.
Yeah, and that's kind of the purpose of the sphere. It's a not the closing your eyes. It's the opposite, right? It's about the
Right.
spectacle. That's why it's in Las Vegas.
Right.
You
The
know, it's
spectacle
usually
city.
it's spectacle without any body to it, without any sort of heart. But it seems like it's a perfect place for it because it just looks so ridiculous. Like Bill A in the chat said, give CK5 the joystick. I don't even know if there is a joystick or it has to be a preloaded design. So there's too many unknowns for me to be excited about it. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't go given the price. And I'm not a big fan of visiting Las Vegas as a city. Like I told you earlier, I wake up early and I go to bed early. So
Yeah.
Las Vegas is not my favorite.
I feel like that's a young fans game. You
Why
know what I
are
am?
you gonna go to Delaware? Be
I was
young?
just gonna say, you know what I am excited about is Delaware. I am very, very excited for that. I think this is gonna be maybe the last one, and I just with how long it's been since Magnaball. I mean, I know Curveball like it wasn't planned that way, but like it's just been so long, and I feel like there's just so much pent up like creative energy and angst and like excitement with the fan base. I feel like that is going to be the must see like you know pinnacle thing of 4.0, kind of like we are saying with like the bakers. Like I just feel like this festival is, I don't know, maybe I'm overhyping it, my expectations are too high and I gotta definitely temper that. But like right now I'm not, I'm excited about New Year's, but okay, it's New Year's at MSG, right? It's like the 15th time they've done it or whatever. And I'm in, Mexico, I've never really been able to swing. The sphere is like you, it's like I'm interested, I'm definitely curious, I'm gonna be paying close attention. Not like, but I think getting back to a fish festival and seeing what they do in Delaware, for me personally, I think that's where I'm most excited.
I'm pretty excited as well. The one thing, and this is my old man speaking, not my father, me, the old man speaking, is the Mid Atlantic in August is going to
Hot as
suck.
shit, humid as
Yeah,
shit.
that's not fun. I mean, the Watkins Glen was higher elevation. So
Yeah,
at night it cooled down to like 60 degrees. So you could sleep when needed. But it is flat and low and hot in Delaware and Maryland in
yeah,
August. And so that's one thing. If I have anxiety about anything, that's going to be the one thing. I do like that this like kind of what you mentioned, that if a lot of fish fans have like a collector's mentality, whether it's tapes back in the day or now checking like bucket lists, like
right,
things that you got to do for fish, and they're always gaining new fans. And a festival, like you said, it's been so long, 8 years at the point now. I guess it'll be 9 years by next that they haven't had a festival.
right. I mean, how many new fans have they gotten in those 9 years? And then, all the other fans are like, oh, talking about the different festivals and things, and like, it builds up hype. I think there's going to be a huge, but also to your point about the heat, I think RV passes are gonna. I mean, they always do, but I think that's gonna be a very hot ticket, go
100%.
instantaneously, because that makes all the difference in the world. I remember Bonnaroo one year; it was like 105 degrees every day, and like at night it only got down to like 85, or like it was still like uncomfortably hot.
Yeah.
Because that's out in Tennessee; it was hot as shit. And then like I hate for one maybe 5-10 minutes, a buddy we ran into, or it wasn't even a buddy, but someone we met in the field had an RV and brought us in the RV with the air condition, and it was just like the most valuable thing on earth to me in that moment, right? Like I was like, I would give all of my money, all of my future, everything just to be in that air conditioner for a couple of minutes. It was that ungodly hot. And like, so yeah, now that you say that, that is going to become an anxiety for me and something I'm going to have to plan very hard to
You're
get.
welcome.
Appreciate it, Brian.
You can always count
Oh,
on me for worries and anxiety.
yeah. All right. Well, listen, I think that's a good place to wrap this. I very much appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me this morning. Uh everybody definitely go check out. I mean, again, continue to check out. I have to feel that all of the people here watching are raving fans of yours, because how could they not be? Your show is awesome. Your podcast is awesome. But either go check it out or continue to check out Attendance Bias. You can find it wherever podcasts are found. Also, Brian did a very cool interview with .net. All right, let's back up a second. I was going to close this out. What was that like? Because I feel like .net is like the legit maker, right? Like once you're on .net, like now you're legit. Like I always thought you were legit, but like being on .net, like you are legit.
It was
What
fun.
that
My
like?
friend texted me. He said, I've always considered .net canon for Fish.
Yeah,
And
you
he's like,
are
now
you are in the canon. You are part of.
I never looked at it that way, although I agree with the sentiment. It's nice that Fish.net is canon, like the lyrics on there. When I need to know lyrics, that's where I go. When I want to go see a set list or how many times the song was played, .net is the resource. I had one of the editors from .net on the podcast. I ironically thought he was someone else. I got his last name mixed up with someone else in the Fish community. And after I spoke to him and figured it out fairly quickly that he was not who I thought he was, I still wanted to speak to him. And then after we were done, because we had a really great interview, it'll probably air in January, he asked me if I would be willing to do an interview for the Fish.net blog.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I'm like, yes, I would.
Absolutely.
Let me see if I can find my time in my busy schedule. And I said yes. And all these questions were really friendly, insightful, but they were easy to answer because
it definitely had a little bit of a softball feel to it, but we're in Fish. There is no hardball. Like it's all
what
fun.
are you going to ask me? Yeah, speculation about New Year's. You know, what is there? You know, it's like which band member do you think sucks the most? Like that's not exactly what Fish.net is about, anyway.
Right. No, that's very exciting. I thought that was very cool when I saw that go out. I was like, good for you, Brian. That's awesome. Being part of the canon.
It felt great. I can't lie. You know, I don't want to sound like a cocky dick, but it was cool to go on Fish.net looking for the set list. I think it was Nashville they were playing that weekend or that week when they had uploaded, and seeing my podcast ad like right front and center in a large font. Like, oh my God, that's me.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Especially this time of year. Like they could have done it in the off season when like the traffic's not that high, but I feel like everybody, at least for me, during tour is when I go on .net the most. I go on constantly, the recaps, the set list, everything. And you were right in the middle of it all. It was very cool.
Felt good. Not gonna lie, and I'm proud of it.
Very cool. Well, again, I appreciate it, Brian. It was very fun talking to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Like and subscribe. We'll be back Wednesday night at 9 Eastern. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.